Hello everyone. Today we're going to go to a witch's grave. That is the urban legend and folklore of this grave in Kirtland Hills, Ohio, which is just outside of Cleveland. There is a strange grave that sits outside the property line and is not with other graves. It is said that it is a witch's grave. There are hundreds, maybe more, so-called witch graves throughout the United States. Say in the Midwest here in Ohio, there's like a top 10, and the Smith grave here is one of them. Then there's a Chesterfield witch's grave, that's in Illinois, and it's a small Amish and Mennonite community that has supposedly a stone marker that doesn't have a name. And then there's Bertha's grave in Minnesota, Aurora's witch grave in Nebraska, the St. Omer witch's grave in Illinois, St. Mary Jane's grave in Minnesota, Felix's grave in Missouri, Molly's in Missouri, Pierre Cheney witch's grave in Michigan, and Bloody Mary in Indiana. There's the Weeping Woman in California, a vampire's grave in Colorado. But we're going to focus on this one in Ohio, and we're going to go check it out ourselves. What makes something a witch's grave is that supposedly a witch was buried there, or someone who practiced black magic, something like that. And the townspeople knew it, and they buried them, killed them, hung them, whatever, and they put them in these strange graves. So one of the earliest settlers in what was to become this area of Kirtland Hills was Levi Smith and his wife Ruth. So as you see, this is an unusual grave. It is outside the property marking here, but that could also be because the road was moved or the road was changed. But this is not the original grave. The original stone and everything in it is now in the Lake County Historical Museum. This was redone by a family member. Levi Smith and his wife Ruth moved here from Derby, Connecticut. After Ruth died, Levi went back to Derby and he married a woman named Rebecca Hotchkiss. They returned to the Smith farm in 1819. Now, in case you don't know, before Salem, Massachusetts witch trials, we had them in Derby, Connecticut, and people were hung and tried. Some were let off for being witches. But this happened in the 1600s, the early 1600s, and I believe in the 1660s, somewhere around there, accusing someone of a witch was no longer allowed. Levi and Ruth moved here in the early 1800s, so that was a long time after the witch trials. Now, I looked back in all of these people's last names in Derby, Connecticut, and there is no mention of them being witches or part of the witch trials. Some claim that Levi Smith helped bring Mormonism to the area, and that was the backlash that caused them to be called witches. But Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, was only 15 years old when Levi died, and he didn't even create the Book of Mormon until 1830. The original headstone had a slightly different epitaph than what we have now. The new one reads, "In memory of Levi Smith, September 25th, 1774, to January 5th, 1820, and Ruth Holbrook Smith, his wife, January 2nd, 1779, to October 28th, 1818, who moved to this farm from Derby, Connecticut in 1814. The headstone was renovated in 1987, and they put the Derby, Connecticut part on there. Around this time, as you guys know, this is when a lot of interest in the spirit, paranormal, and all of that began, was in the 80s. We also had it around the end of the last century. What I'm thinking is somebody came and saw this grave when it was renovated, and they saw the Derby, Connecticut part on there. Now, they researched it, or they knew that that was where they had original witch trials, and I believe that is where the legend came from. They were actually very respectable people, and they had started this church, which started as a log cabin. And I don't see anything about it that would cause you to think There's no feeling here that it's negative. And I think the plus that it's unusual looking. This witch's grave was just created, not from any actual event or thing that happened. It was redoing their headstone and putting Derby, Connecticut on it. I think that's probably it.